Welcome to the Global Tech Leaders Podcast, where we help business leaders and individual contributors with actionable insights to hit their number and figure out the nuances of truly operating a business globally today, squeezing the essence of the lessons learned from the planet's top tech leaders. This is your guide to joining the fast track to global market scaling.
Welcome, I'm Ross Lauder, your host from Single Focus Talent, and I'm joined by our non-exec director, John Quigley, today.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Today's guest is Donnacha Friel, VP of Sales at Wrike. Welcome, Donnacha.
Hey, Ross. How you doing?
Pretty well. Gentlemen, thanks for joining the podcast today. I'm excited to get started. What we're going to do is talk through three main aspects of being successful in software SaaS businesses in Ireland and in Europe as a greater context. We're going to talk through Donnacha's career and what he's been successful in achieving, how he's gone about doing that in the organizations he's been a part of. We're going to talk specifically about Wrike as a market offering. And then more importantly, we're going to speak about Europe as a platform and how it is we leverage our unique place in the world to deliver for global business in the tech space. So welcome, Donnacha. Thank you for your time. We're looking forward to speaking to you and getting to the nitty-gritty of success today. So maybe if you could just give us a flavor, walk us through your journey to date in your career, what brought you to where you are now, and what made you pick each kind of stage of that journey?
Sure. Thanks very much, Ross. Delighted to be here. So Donnacha Friel, I'm currently the VP of Sales for Wrike, the project management software platform. A bit about myself. I have over 20 years of experience within the technology sector. It's kind of a well-beaten path, right? Within Dublin technology community, which is actually quite small when you break it down. But anyway, so I started off as an individual contributor in Dell Computers. I actually started off there in their consumer sales. Then I moved into business sales, and I was actually working with the value-added resellers during the Dell Direct era, which was a great place to cut your teeth as an individual contributor.
I did the exact same role in that team myself.
Right. Okay. Well, then you'll know what I'm talking about. So there was a lot of negotiating, shall we say, but thoroughly enjoyed it, loved it. I always kind of knew that sales was something that I was passionate about. It was the path that I wanted to take. I always kind of said, right, okay, it wasn't something that I just kind of. You do find a lot of people kind of somewhat fall into sales. I kind of made a conscious decision when I finished college that yes, I wanted to get into technology sales for different reasons. I like the, I'm pretty competitive by nature. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that you're somewhat autonomous in relation to how successful you can be. You can own your own success. You can own your own paycheck to a certain degree. That all kind of appealed to me.
That was one of my questions, actually. You've just answered it, because it's very interesting, right? The progression of a sales professional. Like nobody that's 17 or 18, kind of goes to bed at night thinking, I really want to get up tomorrow morning and sell the shit out of project management software, right? So that's very interesting that was an early decision for you to make, right? My own view is that, we're not strong enough here in this country and many other countries, right, to intercept people at an earlier stage to tell them that sales, and particularly technology sales, right, is a fantastic career for somebody to get after. What drove that, though? You said you're competitive, and was there anyone else in your family doing this kind of stuff? Was your dad kind of in sales, or was it just something that you said, hold on a minute, I see one or two people making some good money here, and I think that's what I want to do? What was the driver? I'm curious.
Yeah, well, it certainly wasn't a family thing. I did actually, I had an uncle who was in technology sales, and he was absolutely a guiding light for me. He was somebody who I very much valued his opinion. I did a ton of research about it as well. I like the interpersonal aspect. I've always been quite kind of outgoing person, which isn't always the best recipe for a good salesperson, by the way. But anyway, communication skills is probably one of my greatest assets. So I was keen to put that into play. I was in college, I'm not the most academic, never have been, but in college I studied business management in DIT. came out of there with a degree, and I kind of, then I did the well-beaten path of heading off to Australia for a year. But, it was in Australia then I said, right, okay, I'm ready to come back to Ireland now, and I'm ready to start working, start my professional career. I say I didn't just fall into sales, right? I was living in the south side of Dublin at the time, and Dell were hiring like mad at the time, right, in the old campus in Bray. And that was, they actually had an open night. And I went along to that, and I got hired at that open night, and then started. And I feel like it was such a quick thing, right? I think I the open night was on a Thursday, and I started in a week's time within their consumer sales team.
Do those techniques work anymore, do you think? Kind of what we call milk rounds and open nights and kind of recruitment drives like that. What do you think? Do you guys use them over there at Wrike as part of your armory?
Yeah, we have done, and they have worked very well for us in the past, right? Particularly if you're looking to hire certain languages. What we have done is we might have a French evening with a bit of a French theme, right? Without getting too stereotypical, right? And because what you'll find as well within the tech kind of community in Dublin, everyone knows each other. And particularly because I've got French guys on my team, right? An interesting fact is we've got about 7 Brazilians in the Dublin office alone. Whenever we have a Portuguese or Spanish role that opens up, the amount of referrals these guys bring us in is incredible. Like I've spoken to some of the guys about this, and it's they have their own community. There's a really strong Brazilian community within Dublin, and then you've got this kind of sub community within there of tech workers, right? So there's absolutely, as you know yourselves, there's no better place to get high performers than a referral.
Yeah, I've seen that myself. So for those Iberian countries, selling into those countries is, I wouldn't say tricky. I would imagine though, right, if you're like any other technology company, right, they're not your top performing territories, are they?
They're not. No,
okay.
They're not. No, but I was just using, it was more the example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My top performing, the big hitters is like DACH in the UK. Germans in Dublin, quite difficult to hire.
Yes.
At times, like I'll give you the example, like Salesforce and LinkedIn, they've actually started recruiting directly from universities.
Yes.
In Germany for German speakers, for people. And what they'll do is they'll relocate these guys, they'll bring them over, they'll set them up, they'll give them some, they'll set them up in an Airbnb for a couple of months until they find their feet, etc. And then they'll bring them in as SDRs, train them up, and you can move from a university, having not actually finished your exams, move to Dublin, and you can be in an AE position within 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for the benefit of our listeners, DACH stands for D for Deutschland, A for Austria, and CH being the Swiss region, the German-speaking part of Switzerland. I suppose I've had that experience very much so, where there's almost like this sweet spot of capturing those German speakers who are willing to move here to Ireland to work in our tech sector before they settle down and have the responsibilities of a family and relationships, etc., that might tie them down a little bit more. So getting those kind of more senior, mid-level and kind of field guys tends to be a much greater challenge. It's kind of on a secondment, whereas they can have that experience when they're right out of college, come here, do something a little bit different, and really put that on their CV or their profile. One of the things I certainly look for is, have these guys done an internship or maybe a semester abroad in an English-speaking country? So I've hired some of my kind of best German speakers for some of my clients, where they've gone to Australia for 6 or 12 months. They've gone to the States, they've gone to the UK, where they're not afraid to kind of jump in the deep end. And that's certainly been my experience. It's that kind of timing element in their life. And sometimes they'll stay here. I mean, they'll stay here and have a family here. I mean, that's also been kind of my experience. But I suppose let's drill into that a little bit more. I suppose, would you share that experience? And moreover, I suppose, when you're interviewing those guys, what are you looking for in a Rockstar? Because these guys, let's say they're SDRs, they're looking to qualify inbound leads. For our listeners, this is a kind of an entry-level position where you're getting in leads that are maybe trial downloads or requests for more information. What is it, Donnacha, you're looking for? Like, what are the key triggers for that Rockstar profile? Let's say it's a German speaker.
Yeah. So I'm looking for drive, okay? I want people who know exactly what they're getting into, who know exactly what the role is, who have done a ton of research, have spoken to other people in the position, within the Dublin tech community. They understand our company. They don't have to get really deep into it, but they're able to give me a high level in relation to our value proposition, why they would be excited to sell our software. I suppose to be successful as a sales development rep, you need a couple of things, right? But I think you need to be really, really resilient. Okay, you're going to get 100 no's in a day, and you need to be able to bounce back from those no's. You need to put them to one side and move on.
Absolutely.
You need to have a really big engine in terms of activity. Nobody ever dreamed of being a sales development rep, right? These guys see it as a stepping stone to getting to become an account executive, right? Yeah. But I want people that are fully aware of what they're getting into, what the role entails in terms of, in order to be successful, you need to look at it like a funnel, right? So there has to be at the top of the funnel, you need really, really high activities in terms of the amount of calls you make, the amount of emails that you send. And the brass tacks of it are that in sales development, you are measured by your activities.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm going to get into that in a sec, right? In terms of activity drives results, right? And it's really the behavior, right? Of kind of how people approach that activity. But I get a little nerdy on you here, right? So in the book, I'll Never Hire a Bad Salesperson Again, right? Christopher Kroner lists drive, which he absolutely succinctly kind of gave us how kind of a few lines on how important that is to you, right? It's the most important trait, right? That's common to the DNA of nearly all successful salespeople, right? And funny enough, when being interviewed, right, top performance salespeople versus average salespeople list this, right? 81%, right, of top salespeople say being driven is very important to sales success. Whereas it's a much lower number for average salespeople. Average salespeople say 47% of average salespeople say that being driven is very important to sales success. Yeah. So you can see the difference there in terms of that drive, right? And I suppose my question is, how do you spot that? Like, you must at the top of your kind of talent funnel, right? You must talk to a bunch of people. You're looking for somebody with drive. And, sometimes it's hard to spot that, right? Like, how do you spot that?
You look for, I suppose, other areas in their life that they've overachieved in. And that can be in college, it can be sports, it can be, I'm just looking to see something. Okay, tell me something that you're passionate about. Yeah. And then I want to see, and tell me how you became successful at that. And I'm looking to hear, well, I practiced, or, I didn't take no for an answer. And I was able to get to the top of the students' union and stuff like that. That they've been successful in other areas of their life and that they've worked for it, that they've set themselves goals.
Drive isn't something you can teach necessarily, right? You either have it or you don't have it. You can have all the academics, and I believe you can learn sales. I absolutely do. And any well-run, well-managed organization has a systematized process that's very, very scalable. What you can't do is teach someone to want to be there, right? It's too ingrained. It's too much in their DNA. When I was a hiring manager, one of the questions I used to like to ask was, tell me an example from your own experience of where you faced adversity. You were maybe hemmed in by a process, or you were, locked in with what seemed like a difficult outcome to achieve, and how you thought creatively to overcome that, and tell me about the result. And what I'm looking for is their eye movement almost. If we're doing a face-to-face or even over Zoom, I'm looking for them to look up to the left where it's accessing memory, where they're not bullshitting you, right? They're actually showing you an example and walking you through it. Have you guys used similar questioning techniques, or are there specific questions you guys like to ask in interviews?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, right? Because I'm really, really transparent in interviews, right? And I love people that ask me, how will I be successful in the role? But sometimes what I might actually do is, in an interview, I will just, at the beginning, I'll introduce myself, and then I'll say to the person, I'll just flip it on the head. I'll just say, you must have a ton of questions about the company, about the role. Let's start with that. I'm looking to see, I suppose, the intelligence and around the questioning. Do they want to know about our win rate percentages, or AOVs, or from a sales development, do they want to know how many calls are expected to make in a day? And what I'll tend to do is, or other KPIs, right? And what I'll tend to do is I will say, make absolutely no bones about it in terms of, this is what you need to be this is what you need to do, rather, in order to be successful in this role. And I'll add 10% onto whatever KPIs we have, and I look them in the eye and to see if they're up for the fight here or not. Because then, because I owe it to them to be as transparent as possible in relation to what is going to make them successful. Then, we've got this understanding when they're coming into the role, what's expected of them.
I'm a big fan of that, and I'm glad that you honed in on that, right, as one of the major contributing factors, right, to kind of that you look at, right, to see if someone's going to be successful, because let's face it, right, at a junior role, if you're an SDO or a BDO, right, like you can't have done a whole lot in your life sometimes,
No.
like sometimes you're fresh out of college, or maybe, you've had a year under your belt in terms of tenure, right, at another organization. And there's not like a whole shit ton of demonstrable evidence, right?
Yeah.
That you've been through a ton of battles, right? And you've figured out a blueprint, right, of how to kind of add value to someone's life, right? But if you have the drive, then I think that's hugely important, right? In order to be able to kind of, see it through and make your way through. So I have a quick question. What have you done, or what do you do, right, if you hire somebody who you feel is, really driven and they're ready to rock and roll, and then it ends up like you're pretty much dragging, or your managers or your directors are pretty much dragging them behind them, and the writing seems to be on the wall after like week 1 or week 2. Kind of, what do you do then? What happens, or what have you done?
And I suppose this is where that kind of, my process comes into play, right, in relation to the other factors that I would look at. But to answer your question, I think you need to be really honest with yourself in relation to, a bad hire and why they're a bad hire. Is it something that you missed out on? Or, were they bullshitting you during the interview process, which happens all the time, obviously. And then you need to, particularly in Ireland, and particularly in Europe, right, with the way our employee law works, right, you need to make the decision early, if you're going to exit this person. Or
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, it's bad enough making a bad hire, right? And everybody does it. It happens, right? But what's absolutely worse than that, right, is keeping a bad hire.
The worst thing you can do, right?
Right.
For them as well, by the way. Because if you have somebody in there that's dragging their heels, that's, not taking coaching, not doing their KPIs, they're not happy in the role.
You're doing nobody a service by keeping them there and postponing the inevitable almost. I suppose you've touched on an interesting area there in terms of that hunger piece we just alluded to earlier, where it's like, okay, I really want this. And I've had a couple of examples in my career of guys who had just massive levels of hunger, but they didn't have a value set that was congruent with the organization. Like, from your own perspective, Donnacha, you've mentioned there transparency, which is certainly a key value I have. And I think it unites the team. It's like, okay, if I'm an open book, everyone knows we're all shooting for the same thing. But I guess, do you have a specific set of immovable values that you insist your team have? And maybe some of the questions that will allow you to kind of uncover that in the process, be it interview or be it throughout the kind of the course of working with that person?
I suppose another key attribute that I'm looking for is likability of the candidate. I want to know that they're going to, that they're good skin, right? That they're going to get on with the rest of the team, that they'll integrate well, and that they're coachable. Really, really, really important, particularly for sales development reps, right? This is their first job, right? They know less than nothing about technology, sales, what it takes to be successful. And a lot of them will know very little about your products, about SaaS, about the industry. So they need to be like an absolute sponge in relation to taking coaching on board. And tell you what we've seen now, right, with the current crisis, right, is you need people who are coachable and who are agile and who are, able to pivot and able to diversify in terms of their efforts.
I think that's key. And I have never met, certainly an American multinational, ever that will hire somebody who isn't of that ilk. So somebody who can look at themselves and go, is this me? And I often think a lot of the world's arguments and animosity and challenges, even at a socio-economic and a political level, could be solved if people looked at themselves and go, do you know what? It might be me here, lads. Is it my fault? Is there something I haven't done or I've missed that'll make this progress and get the outcome that we all want? And if people can have that kind of inward focus and self-awareness, I really feel that, it's what drives the team towards a mutual goal. It's just that one thing that helps us all to kind of go, okay, it might be me, and let's not be the stubborn guy who won't, engage with anybody else with meaningful dialogue to actually get this thing over the line.
And that type of introspection is really important. And it's back to your point, Donnacha, I think, about the coaching, right? So your sales managers, your sales directors, I can't stress how important it is, right, for them to get for everybody in an organization, right, to get continual coaching. The point is that has to be received, right? Or people have to have the ability, right, to receive that coaching, right, the way that it's meant, right, for the betterment of individuals and in turn, right, the betterment of an organization. There's a good read I recommend for all sales leaders called Rookie Smarts. And the core concept of the book really is that sometimes it's a benefit being as green as the grass, because as long as you have coachability, because there's a constant sense of curiosity, about various things. And, you look at processes and you look at everything and you go, hold on a minute, why is that still in place if these are the results that I'm seeing? Surely if we did this and this and this, and that constant sense of curiosity helps organizations improve their processes, is what I feel, because the danger is you get somebody that's really set in their ways. And, you mentioned Dell, right? There's a whole load of people that have never evolved, right? Yeah. From some of those organizations, and they still do things the same way, and they're not open, right, to coaching. They're not open. Like, they seem like they are, right? And they seem like they're attentive, right? But they always revert back to what they know. And, they never bring anything back to the campfire to share because they assume that everybody knows it already. So that curiosity piece, is that something as well that you look for, I'm sure, right, in people that, they have a constant sense of curiosity about the role and the job and the process and how it works? Because like your stuff is quite complex, right, in terms of helping people to automate workflows and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's why quite often I'll flip the interview on its head and have the people ask the questions first. It shows me two things, right? It shows me, as you alluded to there, how curious they are about the role, right? But it also, I want to see that these guys have done a shitload of research about a company, and that they're able to then ask intelligent questions, either about our technology or about our processes, or they're genuinely curious about the company that they say that they want to join, in terms of where we've come from, how have we been successful, where are we headed to. And I want to see that I can have a grown-up conversation with this person, because ultimately what you're looking to see is, is this person going to be a good representative of our company? Am I happy to put this person on the front line to speak with our leads that have cost us so much to attain, or our customers that are so valuable to us? Is this person going to be a good representative of our
How do you help people get up to speed in terms of the onboarding stuff, right? So I'm sure there's certain KPIs for you, right, that reinforce that this person is a good hire, right? Because it's, time to ramp or time to first sale, or, what are the KPIs you use, right, to kind of look at how aligned, right, your onboarding is to people's actual productivity,
Yeah, I'd say we look to have people, we do a boot camp after 2 weeks, right? So typically we'll either do that boot camp in the US or we'll do it in Dublin. We kind of take an alternative months, right? And there's a certification process at the end of that boot camp.
I love that. Most onboarding, right, that I have witnessed, right, and this is in quite mature organizations, right, there's no certification process. What it is really is it's done, right? From a management perspective, well, I've done it. That guy has participated in it, but like I've no real gauge, right, as to how much of it sank in, or what needs reinforcement or whatever. So that's really cool. I like that.
And it's quite tough as well, right? And by design, okay. We want to get people out of their comfort zones. We want to really, really challenge them. Because again, they're going to be speaking to our, really, really valuable leads and our really important customers, right? So we need to ensure that they, that they're professional in their approach, that they know what they're talking about, that they're able to understand our customers' business pains and how we can address those pains. And so with the certification process that we have in place, we kind of take it from the full sales cycle in terms of, right, we get them to write out, a prospecting cold email, right? We'll score them on that, right through to the first call. We'll measure them on the first call in terms of the kind of questions that they ask, how well they listen to the prospect, how well they understand the prospect's pains. Then we'll have a second call, right, which is, again, goes deeper in the pains, right? Then we'll actually have a demo. From that, we're looking to see how well they can manage and own a meeting, if you like, and then make sure that they are addressing the business issues that the customer is facing in terms of how our technology, the business impact that our technology has around those issues.
Who owns this process, by the way, in your organization, right? Is it HR? Is it sales, right? Or is it sales enablement? Or kind of who takes full ownership for this process?
Sales enablement.
Okay. And so then that must run into kind of, subsequent phases of enablement, right? To help people get better and better and better.
Yeah. So what I would say to you, right, that the secret to a good bootcamp and the secret to a good certification process is that it only starts when the person is finished and actually on the phones, right?
Okay.
There has to be constant reinforcement because we cannot expect people to just, to go to San Diego or wherever it might be and do a boot camp and then come back and then to start delivering straight away, right? There's obviously a ramp period and all that kind of stuff, right? But the expectation is with the managers that the managers spend a huge amount of time listening to calls, side-by-side coaching, debriefs after bigger calls, listening to demos. It's really, really key that there's constant reinforcement.
Talk to us about that structure a little bit in terms of how you go to market, right? So like you got a management structure there, obviously, right? And then you probably have business development or sales development or lead development or whatever you guys call them, right? And then inside sales, outside sales. What does that structure look like? And like how many people, what's the ratio of people per manager and, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we're extremely lucky as an organization. We receive, a huge amount of inbound inquiries from our website, people downloading trials of our software. And so what our structure is, we have kind of a sales development team. Okay. We've got 10 SDRs and they are qualifying inbound leads. They then pass, we've got 2, this is now just in the EMEA office, right? We've got 2 account executive teams, right? So we have, I'm hesitant to say it, but I'll say it anyway, right? We've got your traditional hunter-farmer model.
Yeah.
But we've got a team of account executives who deal with new business only. And then we have, and then as soon as a prospect signs a contract with us, they are then worked by our account management team, who are responsible for ensuring deployment is as smooth as it can be, ensuring that that adoption rates are as high as possible, and helping with upsell, cross-sell of opportunities.
So what's the ratio of these? So most of your stuff, right, is inbound, right? Because again, I'd imagine you guys do free trials and, your typical kind of process, right, for, easy to try, easy to buy, all that kind of stuff, right, for software as a service. So the ratio of your qualifiers, right? Let's just call them qualifiers, right? To account executives. How many SDRs or BDRs are feeding the account executives?
This is one of the nuances of working in EMEA, though, right? It depends on the region and on the languages support.
Very
right?
good. Very good. Yeah.
It's a key point. And I think for our guys who may be listeners in the US, can you just maybe take us through that? So we're very much a heterogeneous market here in EMEA. And for those who don't know, EMEA is Europe, Middle East and Africa. What we found is that obviously you mentioned it earlier, and I've had this experience as a sales leader as well. DAC in some cases made up 40% of my number. The UK could be as much as that as well. And then everything else is the difference. So you're talking Dutch, you're talking French, Spanish, Portuguese we touched on earlier. And it's this kind of mix of all of these different languages, which may have a higher overhead. And by the way, there's different tax laws in each of those respective countries in terms of, VAT, corporation tax is a subject for another day, but it may actually be more expensive. And not all the countries in EMEA use the euro, for example. It's only the ones in the EU. And even within that, there's only a selection of countries that have adopted it. Can you maybe take us through some of those challenges you've had as a leader trying to kind of translate that message to a global context in a very kind of disparate and heterogeneous marketplace?
Yeah. It's kind of, I've worked in a few US multinationals now, right, at this stage. And this is the one constant in that you, as a leader in EMEA, you have to really shout from the rooftops just to make it known and understood about the different nuances in your region. Because what you can find sometimes is that, particularly if your HQ is in the US, right, that they kind of, that the intricacies, shall we say, of working in EMEA can be lost. Toughest thing you'll find is, we touched on it earlier, is getting talent with the various languages. And this is the number one reason that a lot of tech companies are setting up in Dublin, because Dublin is just a melting pot of different nationalities, and you've got your transient tech workers now coming to Dublin, right, with the view of starting their career within technology with all these different languages. And this is, I believe, the number one reason. It's the access to that multinational talent within Dublin. This is the number one reason that makes Dublin such an attractive place, Dublin and Ireland, such an attractive place to set up.
And the corporate tax rate doesn't get in the way either, right?
No, it certainly doesn't get in the way. No, but even without the tax rate, right, you can have as favourable a tax rate as you like, right, but without the talent, it's no good.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty of other examples of jurisdictions in this part of the world which have a 0% corporation tax rate. And for those of us on the podcast, the corporation tax rate in Ireland is 12.5%, which is very much that halfway house between your 0%. It's probably going to be investigated by somebody at some point in the future versus your kind of 25 to 30% that you would see in the UK and Central Europe. So I think we're a nice halfway house. And I think you made a key point there around talent. And I know the IDA, and for our listeners, the Irish Development Authority, who are a good government institution, one of the few I respect who do a good job of promoting Ireland as a platform for technology in Europe, is that talent piece as well. It's one of their T's they really speak about. And we've created this kind of ecosystem. There's plenty of people with languages in the UK, for example, but they don't have that same kind of ecosystem like we have. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, HubSpot, Salesforce, you name it, they're all here. And it's this like kind of movable talent pool that people tend to rotate. And you also made a great point earlier that there's a small community and everyone knows each other. And that's particularly true in Ireland in general. We're quite a parochial society, but also within the context of tech. And I think success breeds success there as well. So I suppose if you're somebody who is looking to attract somebody here to, let's take Wrike. What is it that you guys can bring to the attention of talent? Because it's at a premium, right? I mean, there's a lot of guys out there who are German speakers who may be good or may be average. How do you kind of sell that message for, I suppose, Ireland at one level we talked about, but also, Wrike? Talk us through Wrike and, your value prop in this marketplace.
As we spoke about earlier, we're looking for driven people. And, what driven people are looking to do is they're looking to progress their career. So what we can offer people is really the opportunity to grow their career within a fast-paced company that's on a, really, up and to the right growth trajectory. Mm-hmm. If I think about my own org, we had our sales kickoff there in January, and the statistic that hit out the most at me, and something that I'm really, really proud of, is that 35% of my sales org was promoted in the last 12 months.
Excellent.
Right. So what we're looking to do is, and what we've done a really, really good job in is building a career path, be it from SDR to account executive. And we've segmented, different levels of account executive, or they may want to go to account manager. Got different levels of account manager. We've also got a renewals, customer success team. It's kind of, if you put in the effort, work hard, the returns are there, and not just economical, but but in terms of building your career and climbing the ladder. And what you'll find is a lot of people, like younger people today, are looking to really, really move fast within the company. And so one of my biggest challenges is setting the right expectations for people because they're coming knocking on my door after 6 months saying, I want to move up, Sure. What we've had to do is really set proper expectations in terms of you need to be in a certain role for a certain length of time before you can be considered to move up.
It's a constant conversation, actually, myself and Ross have in terms of the kind of, B2B climate today, as opposed to, maybe 5-10 years ago, where it's kind of, it's not a case of where, somebody comes in the door, you give them a list and they belt through the calls, or, they have a load of inbound and they qualify that stuff. The environment has become very complex, and it's much harder to help people understand value, right? In terms of what you guys bring to the table over somebody else, right? Over your competitors, right? And, it's difficult enough to get somebody's attention as well, right? But not only that, right, is that you got to show people the impact of kind of what your solution is doing in their business environment. And that is not an easy thing to do. It takes a long time, right, for people to get fluent, right, in their ability, right, to actually help people that they're speaking to navigate through that complexity, So expectation is hugely important. I agree with you, because what I found is that the expectations are all kinds of wrong sometimes when people come into an organization and they want to be in the next role, in 6 months' time. But the reality is it takes a minimum of 18 months, I feel anyway, for someone to really boss a SDR, BDR type role, a qualifier type role, in order to be kind of confident and capable, right, to do the next role. What kind of timeframes are you seeing, or what expectations do you guys set?
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with you. And actually, what I've seen in the past is that if you move somebody too quickly, you're actually doing them a disservice, right? Because they may not be ready for the role. They fail in the role, and then you're having difficult conversations. And it's, and this could be a good person, right? And the reason that they're failing is that you've moved them too quickly. Because as you say, it's that kind of that business acumen that you can only learn and develop through tenure. Because you can't have somebody straight out of college, have them doing a BDR role for 6 months and then move them into a closing role and expect them to understand executive priorities and business impacts after only 6 months as a BDR, right?
Do your account managers actually do any prospecting? Just while you mention it there, do they do any prospecting, or do they just tackle kind of whatever your terminology is? I'm sure it's kind of like sales qualified leads or QLs or something like that.
Yeah. So at the moment, the account executives do not, right?
Okay.
They are only working on inbound leads. We have a higher segment, right, of enterprise. We have an enterprise team, which is 10,000 employees and above. These guys are more experienced. They've been around the block, a lot more tenure, right? And they do their own prospecting.
But they'd probably have an assigned set of accounts as well, would they?
They do. They have kind of a hybrid role, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They have an assigned set of accounts, and they've they've built out proper territory plans in which they've said, right, I'm going to get X amount of revenue from my account base, X amount from prospecting net new myself, and a very, very small amount of revenue then from inbound leads.
Yeah. Am I wrong in saying that kind of younger generation of folks coming into organizations, right, seem to think, right, that their career path belongs to somebody else, i.e. their manager or somebody else, to show them, right, how they can get to a particular position, as opposed to the accountability of owning their own career path and saying, hey, what are the milestones? What do I need to do? And what extracurricular stuff do I need to show, right? And what other responsibilities do I need to show to kind of help me to kind of get into that role or this role or whatever,
Yeah, it's a fair point and a fair observation, shall we say, right? So what's really good there, and what I find works really well, is I would have the individual contributors to create their own development plan. Right, because as you say, they're looking for their manager. Hey, I'm here 12 months. You tell me I get promoted after 12 months. I would actually, when somebody after, we can start having this conversation after somebody being in 6 months in a row. And I would say, okay, let's put in place a development plan, and I'll give them a template to help them to create it. But they would create their own milestones. And the only way this works is, right, if these milestones need to obviously be challenging and somewhat aspirational. But then, you can have these conversations. You would have development plan meetings. Then you can have one of these twice a month, right? Where you would sit down, look at the development plan together, see how the individual is tracking against the goals that they've set themselves. And you quickly can see then if somebody's serious about moving to the next level or not.
And I think that's a key point about how organizations are managed in general. And we talked about this in the interview process as well. And we talked about folks who are institutionalized in an organization. And I suppose for me, it comes down to, do you want a job or do you want a career? And as John mentioned there, who owns that? I'm ultimately responsible for my own success. And I don't think there's any other discipline in the world that's more true for than sales in terms of determining your own success. But I think the key thing that I've learned that versus working in an SME or a small kind of maybe a family-run business, etc., is the Americans rarely get it wrong. They know how to grow an organization, and they know what repeatable and scalable success looks like. And that development plan is absolutely key. And I think, if you are to instill that in your people and have them say it to you. I did pro coach myself in Dell and pro sell. You may remember it, Donnacha, from your days there as well. And it's this idea of drawing out. It's like, you tell me what success looks like. You tell me where you're going to be. And okay, well, how do we reverse engineer that process in order to get there? And it's the same in the sales process in terms of the lead funnel itself. It's just from a people perspective. I suppose, what would you say has made the difference in your own team in terms of that Rockstar? Like, what's been a trait or a series of traits for people who've really kind of owned and excelled at that? And obviously we want to balance off, somebody's moving too soon versus becoming too stagnant. So what would you say because these guys are also going to get hit up by other organizations by recruiters like ourselves, etc. We need to find that right person. So what would you say made that difference in terms of that career progression, that 35%? And even within that 35%, you mentioned there, Donnacha, who's going to be who's going to be a sales leader in the future? And why do you see that now?
Yeah. So who's going to be a sales leader? I genuinely believe it's, people that enjoy the coaching aspect around sales, who enjoy helping people. Right, because it's that coaching aspect that really makes the difference. Are you going to have so you have some sales managers that like sitting there and on Excel and crunching the numbers all day,
sure.
Or are you going to be the sales manager who's going to sit down side by side, listening to your reps, understanding the challenges that they're facing, working with them together to try and overcome those challenges, and also really understanding the people on your team, what motivates them, what challenges are they facing, as I said there. What plans are you going to put in place to help them develop as individuals? It's that coaching piece, right, that you can't really fake. But this is what you're going to have to do on a Monday morning when it's piss and rain out. I suppose the unglamorous part of the job, right? It's that kind of helping at the top of the funnel. Yeah. Also, you've got lots of sales managers out there that will come in and help close a deal in relation to just the commercials, right? Like closing a deal for me is the easiest part. You kind of brought the sales rep has brought the deal to a certain level, right? And then you come in, you swoop in and take all the glory by closing, right? And just giving offering some favorable commercials or something like that. Right?
Sure.
Where the real help is done is listening into the discovery calls, listening into the first demos, looking through presentations that your reps are doing, etc. Really understanding how they're communicating with their prospects and with their customers. Do they have a real understanding of the business issues and the pains that your prospects are feeling? Are they really able to differentiate your solution from the competition?
Have you? Yeah, I guess it comes down to the BANT, the IBM sales methodology. Have you established a budget? Do you know who the authority is?
Yeah.
Really those pains, have you gone in deep to them, and what's the timeline? I mean, why now? Why not 6 months ago, or why not 6 months from now? Yeah. And when I was at HubSpot, I think they did a great job from a sales qualification perspective of actually putting a metric beside each of them, 1 to 3. What's the severity of that particular thing you've identified? Let's just not take what's given. Let's dive deeper into that. And I think you made a key point there around something that doesn't seem intuitive, around the closing being the easiest part, because most people think getting the revenue in is the hardest part. But actually, if you've done a good job of really disseminating down to why it is we're here at where we are, and that there are no surprises, then that's actually harder work to get to that point, right? I think you mentioned earlier that inbound leads form the crux of what a lot of your guys do. So that could go either way. It could be there's a massive demand for your product, which I don't doubt that there is, but it's also quite easy to download a free trial and not do anything with it. So I think what you're saying there is the grunt work is done in that middle piece, and that qualification around whether it's real or not. Is that kind of your assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. So from an inbound lead perspective as well, it's more difficult to own the sales process. Because what we find is, we're in a hyper competitive market. if somebody's finding our software through SEO, right, you can bet that they're finding 4 other vendors as well.
Sure.
So there's a couple of things are key to us, right? It's first to respond. We need to be our speed to lead is of the utmost importance, but also we need to be able to differentiate ourselves from in a hyper competitive market, as I say, and we need to be able to do that quickly and within the sales process. And how do we do that, right? Well, we do that, I suppose, by demoing any true differentiators that we may have, right, from our key competitors within EMEA. And typically we do a good job at that, right? But then, we need to put in place really strong mutual action plans with our customers as well, and
hold your customers accountable to that. Like, they've got to get right. I suppose from my own perspective, when I was at HubSpot, we had a couple of key KPIs that we stuck to. They were, how many initial assessments did you do? So it's kind of a qualification call where you're giving out some value, showing some steerage and how they can solve this problem, giving away some resources. And then there was the demo call, but you didn't get to, and nobody was granted a demo because you expressed an interest in our product. You had to earn it as a prospect, which is kind of a weird concept. But the most expensive thing that a rep has is their own time.
Yeah.
And their time is just as valuable as yours. So if we're going to go through this process together, we're going to need to make sure that we each have something in it that is earned, right? That you don't just get a demo for the sake of a demo, because I've seen so many organizations fail with that. They're just so hungry to get on the demo, but actually they're not actually qualifying if the buyer's on the phone, if they actually can implement this, have they done this before, etc. Have you had that experience, Donnacha?
Yeah, we've very much a quid pro quo model, right? And that is the number one issue that we face. And that, because you may have somebody further down the pecking order, shall we say, right, who's doing the initial evaluation. And this person has absolutely zero, they may even have zero influence, right? But they've certainly got zero buying capabilities. And you doing a demo to this person is not going to move this deal along at all. The salespeople need to realize that their time is extremely valuable, that the software that we have and the software that lots of other companies are offering is extremely valuable as well, in terms of making companies more productive, making companies more efficient, etc. And what we try to do is we will only do really tailored and specific demos. But in order for us to do that, as I say, we need to put a ton of resources into it. And so we will ask for certain things in return, like having the decision maker at that demo. Because very, very seldom do you see somebody will sign off on X amount of software if they haven't actually seen a demo of the software themselves.
No, absolutely. I fully agree with that. And it's completely okay to say no to people and say, look, I don't think this is a right fit for you, and have them justify their perspective and go, no, actually, here's why it's important. And if it means enough to them, they'll get that other person on the phone because it's that important to them and what they're doing, rather than ticking box in terms of evaluating something without actually demonstrating the value to the business and what it will bring, and why they're having that conversation, rather than just being a kind of a tick the box exercise. Okay, well, look, gentlemen, I think we're going to wrap up here at this point. I suppose one of the key questions I like to ask at the end is, how would you define the crack? What is it for you and your team, and what's it for us as a platform in a country in an EMEA context?
For us as a country, I think what you'll find a highly educated, highly ambitious, highly driven workforce. And the beauty of it is we don't take ourselves too seriously. And what that amounts to is people who are highly coachable, who you will enjoy working with, right? Because obviously, you'll spend a lot of hours in work, but who are results orientated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not afraid to have the humor, but know that balance between, work life and putting in the effort yields the results as well. And I think we've kind of built our brand on that basis as a country. I'll never forget one of the first sales meetings I was in with an American expat here on secondment. And he was like, could you please tell me what the update is in this deal? And the rep replied, well, he was from the depths of Leitrim, said, well, crack with your man here is the horse ain't moving until next week. And he just looked bemused. The sales leader had no idea what he just said, if it was in fact even English. But it's just our colloquial way of kind of explaining where certain things are and kind of how we have a handle on it and build rapport with ourselves as a community almost.
Yeah.
All right, gents. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And thanks for joining. Look forward to the next edition.
You've been listening to the Global Tech Leaders Podcast, designed for both established and aspiring career-focused tech rock stars, as well as helping leadership figure out how to speak global in today's multicultural world. For further details, check out sf-talent.com.